Hello, I'm David Breeden, Senior Minister at First Unitarian Society, and today I have with me Maureen Hunt, a member of First Unitarian Society and also an educator. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit today about old music and how to raise free-thinking kids, and so thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, well, you teach music.
Yes, I am an early childhood music teacher of Music Together, as well as teaching band students at the elementary and middle school level. And I sing with adults as well, and we try to do things where we can incorporate or let there be also involvement from the audience in singing, and so that's adults. So all ages, I feel like I teach.
Okay, well, let me ask perhaps a hot button question, which is, okay, I'm the school administrator, and I see that my budget's not doing well. I know what I'll cut: music.
Well, that's where unfortunately we make the big mistakes, because music is something that touches all parts of the brain. In the early 90s, we've found with brain development and with brain imaging that the music, you use every part of your brain basically when you're making music, listening to music, doing things with music, and that helps with creativity, that helps with math skills, reading skills, social skills. It really is a mistake for them to cut music. If you want your students to be able to read better and to learn better, you want to expand your music education.
Okay, well, all right, so it's good for the brain.
Yes.
And what else can it do for students?
Well, socially, and as well as like working with a group and understanding others, music is something that makes immediate connections. You can have someone who doesn't even know the same language, verbal language, but you can connect musically. Okay,
and you look at other cultures and their music then.
Well, with what I do at the early childhood level, I use a very multicultural selection of music, and so we expose children from birth to 5 to all different types of music and tonalities and rhythms that we don't always have here in our culture. Like, we are very typically 4/4 or 3/4, where you can dance to it. But there are other cultures that have more 5/4 and upbeats and changes, and those things are very difficult sometimes for older students or adults to feel comfortable with. But when you just expose the children to these different tonalities and different rhythms, it's just a different tonality and different rhythm. It's not a difficult issue if they are exposed early on.
Oh. Well, I have a 10 ears, so I can't sing and I can't learn a musical instrument.
Now, I have a hard time believing that, because really they say it's a bell curve where there's only a tiny number of Mozarts and a tiny number of people who are actually medically tone deaf. Everyone else, we're on a bell, and actually we're also on what they call sort of a tonal tree and a rhythmic tree, or branches of a tree, I guess, your musicality tree. And it is actually rhythm, learning and being able to keep a steady beat and being rhythmical and being able to sing in tune and to carry a tune and play an instrument. Those are two different branches on a musical tree. So you are actually probably maybe low on your branch. You haven't moved very far, but if you spent time singing or tapping, playing a drum, you would actually, your skill in that area would grow.
Okay, all right. So it's a matter of just getting into it and doing it then.
Yes.
Pretty well.
Yes.
So, I mean, they didn't teach much music when I was a student either, all those years ago.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the key time to get excellent exposure is from birth to 5, birth to 9. Those are the ages that if you have if your parents or caregivers have been singing to you or bouncing you on their knee, that is where you gain some exposure to the rhythm and tones, but also if you're early on, you get the exposure of not the exposure, but the disposition to like music, because you see the adults around you playing with music and enjoying themselves. And that's why it's so important to do it early.
Mm-hmm. Oh, well, you know, I was just reading something the other day about Mozart, your child genius, of course, but that actually Mozart did practice a lot, that it's not that there was nothing magical about his talent. His dad obviously pushed him. And,
right. So it is something that you need to practice. Like I've found with my elementary school students, if I have them 2 days a week, if I get to teach them 2 days a week, they can grow so much faster than if I just saw them for one 20-minute period once a week. So it's exposure and also the time spent doing it.
Okay. Well, how did you discover your love of music?
Well, I was very mobile as a child, with living in a different city every other year. Oh. And so it happened to be the same city, so city, town, city, town. And one thing that was a constant was music, well, two things, music and movement. When I could connect with people in music class, that is what made me feel good in school. If I went to, gym class, music and movement, those are the two things that kept me grounded in schools.
Okay.
And so I know that, here in Minneapolis, where I live and teach, we have a high mobile population in the schools where students are moving around, and so I understand that, and I try my best to give them a really, make them feel good about what they're doing in my class, in my groups.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I know you play the flute.
I do.
Was that your first instrument or first love? Or?
It was my first love. I told my mom when I was 5 years old that I was going to play the flute. She plays the cello, but I said I was going to play the flute. And when I started, I used a school instrument, and they didn't have enough flutes for me, and so they gave me a clarinet to start with. That was fine, but the next year I demanded a flute, and I got a flute. So when you want to do something, if you have the determination, you can do it.
Okay, but the flute is an interesting instrument in that, I mean, it requires a lot of control of the lips and breath and...
Yes, initially it is a little difficult to make the sound out of it. And also you have many more keys than you actually are touching most of the time. And so initially, because of you're working on how to make the sound, you're also working on coordination. You're using both hands and different fingers, and also timing for using your tongue to start the notes. So yes, it does take a lot, but you start slow. You start with just your first left hand. You start with just the mouthpiece with the younger students.
Oh, really?
At the state fair every year for the last 10 years, I have given 30-second initial lessons on band instruments to students from age 4 to 10. They've never touched an instrument before, and I just say, do this, try that, go. Give them a few, 30 seconds or a minute or so to play on their own. So I've been able to do that.
Well, while you have that in your hand, will you play something for us?
Sure. This is one I like to figure out by ear. That's actually the beginning of a clarinet concerto, but I loved it so much that I listened to it many times, and I wrote down what notes the flute would play. And so I actually believe that it's very important to learn some things by ear, just for playing, and some things being able to read the music in order to read it so you can play with other people, the same thing. So it's very important to do both of those things.
Well, I cannot read music. I remember Roy G. Biv, isn't it? Or
yes.
Yes, yeah, but that's about all I remember from my music lessons long ago. But yeah.
Well, there's fun ways online these days to quiz yourself on how to read the music. A note comes up, and you you click what note you think it is, and it gives you a grade, and so you can test yourself and online these days on how to read the music.
I had no idea. Okay, all right. Well, tell me a little bit about your philosophy of teaching music.
Well, I believe that all children are musical and that they are all capable in some way to make music, to appreciate music, to love music. And I also believe that it's an important thing for their hearts, for their to participate fully in their own culture too, to be able to make music that they know.
Okay. Interesting, interesting. Well, also I happen to know that you have raised some freethinkers. So I want to circle back a little bit and ask you a little bit about that, because we do call this Free Thinking Forum after all.
Yes.
And how did you raise freethinkers?
Well, I believe that music, with using music, that it is a very powerful medium, and that you can, if you have a wonderful sermon or a wonderful speech, a wonderful book, if you add music to this, and if you listen to the sermon, but there's a song that goes along with it, that that's either in the same, in the same, like an emotion, if it expresses an emotion, it can bring people together and have them feel the same thing. And so, what I'm trying to say, that when we have a shared experience, and especially with music being so powerful, it really brings to home, whatever the subject it is that you're speaking about. It really kind of adds that extra layer of emotion.
Okay, all right. And of course, I do a lot of talking, of course, obviously words can get at emotion, but there's always a filter, isn't there, in the way that music goes right to your gut.
Right. Also with regard to music and connections, and that's really important when you're trying to raise free thinkers, in that you want them to be able to connect with people from other cultures, other religions, others, and you want that to be well, let me just, I remember meeting a 4-year-old 2 weeks ago when I was teaching preschool at First Unitarian Society. Okay. And I had never met her before. She came on a music Sunday. I teach the preschool students music every month, once a month. And she enjoyed, we had a time where we would shake eggs, and I asked each of the little ones to shake their egg, and I asked all of them to shake their eggs, but I asked each one individually, how should we shake our eggs? So they get to do something where others are watching them, others are listening to them and doing what they want to do. So I'm giving them some power, giving them some like a happy experience with music, but also she saw me 2 weeks later and knew who I was and had this very powerful, hi, Ms. Hunt, or hi, Maureen. And she really had a connection to me just based on that short period of time that we spent together. And hopefully that family will come back and become part of our society. So making that connection is I think, music, that's what brought her, at least she had a very good experience, I think, in the preschool that day.
So she found her creativity, or?
Yes, yes. And also with music, you don't always demand that they produce, that they perform. We accept that when students are, when the children are sitting, if they're just watching or they're just listening, it's not that they're not doing it or trying not to participate. You know that they're taking it in aurally, like A-U-R-A-L-L-Y, and they're not ready to produce. They're still processing and learning, and so we accept that as well. And the other students see that, and I say to the students, it's all right if they don't if they don't feel like doing exactly what we're doing, because we accept that. They're learning in a different way at that exact moment.
Okay, so, well, got to have a good audience too, right? But, you know, and, I mean, I enjoy music very, very much. It's just that I can't produce any. Didn't learn how, or didn't find that that creative place early enough, I suppose.
Yeah, it is harder, but you can learn. Like the music together, the two people who started music together, it was by a music educator and a musician. And the musician could play guitar really, really well, but he couldn't sing in tune. He only played guitar. But after doing a number of the things that he saw that were happening in the preschool room that they were trying to introduce early childhood music in 25 years ago and research it, he tried those things. He tried, you know, doing the things that they do, singing with music, just using his voice. And he now can sing in tune. But he couldn't when he first, you know, 25 years ago, he couldn't sing in tune.
So it was like a muscle, building up a, you know, a muscle.
Exactly.
In that. Okay, all right. And, well, have you always been a Unitarian Universalist?
Well, my mother found the First Unitarian Society when I was in middle school. And before that, we didn't go to any religious institution. And she found it actually through music. She first joined the orchestra and then decided afterwards, oh, I think I like what they're doing here. I believe the religious education for my children would be really good here. And so she decided to become a member. And that's when I became a member as well.
So you're
I
second
guess
generation.
You could say I started out UU.
Interesting. So did your parents have a religious background, or they were coming out of, or? My
father had been brought up Catholic, but in the 1960s, and being a sociology professor, he had some things that he didn't agree with the Catholic Church. So he did not stay with the Catholic Church. And then after that, he did yoga and sort of discovered Hinduism. That would be his, I guess, his religion now.
Interesting.
And my mother's still Unitarian Universalist, but she came from northern Minnesotan Lutheran background.
Well, there are a few of those in Minnesota after all.
Yeah.
So, and it's a very rich mine for us. We get lots of ex-Lutherans and ex-Catholics too. So you came and so were your parents looking for religious education for you, wanting you to be exposed to?
I think so. I think that was part of it. I mean, my father really thought that we would figure things out for ourselves. He would talk to us about things. We would learn about different things. We did go to a few other churches on our own when we were younger, just because friends of ours invited us. And so I was exposed to other religious institutions, but never really the religious education.
All right, so you don't have the guilt associated with a lot of people. I come from a Pentecostal background, and there was a lot of baggage to get rid of before I could really be free to.
No, but interestingly, my father, being that he said no to Catholicism, I realized that I inherited his emotional emotional reaction to Catholicism. So for me, even though I didn't know that many other religions, or that I became Unitarian Universalist in middle school, I still had a negative feeling toward Catholicism. And I sort of looked into that as an adult, realizing that wasn't really my experience. I was just feeling what my father was feeling. And so that was really interesting. Now I don't have that because I've thought about it, and that hasn't been the case now. After I've named it, after I've said this is why I feel this way, I don't have any experience myself with negative experience with Catholicism. And interestingly, bringing it back to music, my father didn't sing in tune and didn't whistle in tune, but he loved to sing and he loved to whistle.
Okay.
And my mother really did more of her cello playing and with others outside of the house. So I really wasn't, I mean, they sang to me when I was younger, but I feel like that I started out with music being sung to me, so that probably was help.
Interesting. Yeah. So she, and for people who don't know, First Unitarian Society has long had a very strong music program, right, and an orchestra, right, which we're very proud of, and they perform usually 3 or 4 times a year, and right, in that. So your mom was playing the cello. Yeah,
in the 1980s. In Minneapolis. And I actually would love to expand more of the early childhood music than just once a month with the elementary school student, or with the preschoolers. I would love to have the parents and caregivers also be a part of that. That would be the ideal, because then they're learning the disposition to love music, and they go home and play around with music that they both know. It's not just the child and the teacher, or the children in the class and the teacher. As well as doing an choir. I would love to, you know, if I had time to do I did 1st through 5th grade choir at First Universalist Church a few years ago, and I would like to continue that at First Unitarian Society. Yeah, that would be wonderful.
Interesting. Okay. Well, how about your kids then? So you were raised as Unitarian Universalist, and sounds like you didn't get, or you were able to think through the religious baggage that many of us live in that place of reactivity and kind of were anti or something because we feel damaged and angry about that. So you thought yourself past that. So what about your kids?
I think they have a really good. They can be exposed. They have been to different religious institutions. I know my 7th grader has been to at least 6 or 7 other services at different locations, and I know she's talked about the music that has been there as well, and how interesting that they, the different types of music, or how people are singing, or if they have a chorus or choir, or if they, so it's been really interesting to hear about that. And my 1st grader, I had her as a preschooler as well in my class. So when she was a preschooler in the music class, and she I think we've talked about how other people believe there are many different things to think about, and you have to accept and explore, and ask them about them, talk about it, and not have it be something where it's you're wrong and I'm right, or that sort of attitude. We know I have been teaching them that is not, it's just different. Isn't that a Minnesota thing?
Well,
that's different.
It's certainly a healthy way of thinking about it anyway. I mean, we literally have a curriculum for our religious education for people who don't know, called The Congregation Next Door, and it goes searching, and the idea is to get in a van and take off, and I think they've been to the Hindu temple this year, for example, and of course they've been to the Basilica, and so they do see how other people worship, and our approach is to really look at it and see, not as, oh, that's funny, but rather this is what people do, and try to see the good that people are experiencing in that. Right. Yeah.
So they're not an other. You will have, when you have a conversation with somebody about it, you have experience in that. So that is really important to me. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, in the bad old days when I was a kid, certainly, I mean, even the Protestants didn't like the Catholics. They were dangerous thinkers, and I know that that's still the case in some places, but it does seem that those barriers are beginning to break down. And we thought the Catholics were just wrong, after all, and intermarriage with Catholics was a much condemned thing by my grandparents and that kind of thing. So that level of respect is new, interesting, and different, and I think very, very important of what we're doing with our children, and again, making them free thinkers.
Right. And I love how our hymnals have a variety of music. There's Gandhi's favorite hymn in there, and
what's Gandhi's favorite hymn?
Raghupati Raja. I think,
Really?
I think that's what it said.
Well,
he sang it every morning. It says it at the bottom.
Well, I didn't know
and
that.
I think it's only 2 chords on the guitar.
Oh, well, I could even do that maybe. I broke one of the keys on my tuner, but I will get back to my guitar one of these days when I get it fixed up. And also, you are one of our music directors in the summer at First Unitarian Society.
Yes, yes. Yeah. I've enjoyed doing that since, I believe, 2007.
Great.
And that's been great in pulling people in. New visitors have come in, and I ask them at coffee hour, do you play any instruments? Would you like to come play with us sometime? And it has brought a number of people to be part of the service, and that has when somebody wants you to be there and has a connection with you, then you know, you aren't just a nobody, or you aren't just in and out of some place. You are part of you are able to be part of the service. So that's been really, really satisfying too, in making connections that way.
Well, and also one of the things that I love is the variety of music that we have. Where we don't do just the dead Germans, as the classical music, as the saying goes. We also do hootenanny type things, right? It's across the spectrum of
eclectic set of music.
Yes, we have our very own house rock band. Yeah.
Right.
Because I mean, music is a connector in people, isn't it? And why don't you play a little something else for us as we wind down?
Let's see.
Hate to put you on the spot.
Something? No, not at all. Something that. Only after a few lessons, if they can get about 5 notes in, I teach my students, and they love to play this. They will never, ever get bored of this song. You might know it. Let's go band, or go team go, or they want to know how to play that. If they have something they really want to do, they will learn, okay, show me how to touch that. Where do I put my fingers? What are those notes? They get really excited about it.
So it's 5 notes, and then suddenly you've got it going on. You can play. All right, so well, I remember playing one of those little plastic flute things, and now it was
recorders.
Yeah, recorder. I was so dreadful. I mean, that's when I gave up. I think is right. I couldn't even play a recorder, but
you might not have had a teacher that can connect with you. That's an important thing to do too. In the beginning of all my lessons, I always ask students some question. How are you? What did you do? How did you share your music this week with your family?
Yeah. Well, that's true. My family wasn't musical. My parents weren't. That's interesting. So one way to get your kids to be creative is to get in there and play your own instrument and share music.
Yeah. You can whistle, sing.
Off key.
Body percussion.
Well, Maureen Hunt, thanks so much for coming by today and talking with us about music and freethinkers, and you've got me inspired now, and to go find that Gandhi song, and and I may even retune my guitar and get it fixed back up again. And
I'll be happy to help with that.
All right, and people can certainly come on by First Unitarian Society and listen in on our wide variety of music. So come on by. I am David Breeden. I'm the Senior Minister at First Unitarian Society. Thanks so much for joining us. All right, well, that went pretty good.
Sometimes I lose my train of thought.
Flew by. Time flies by.